Well, hello and welcome to another episode of In Conversation with Benedict Rogers, an interview series produced by Hong Kong Watch. And this week, of course, we mark the 25th anniversary of the handover of Hong Kong, and also the second anniversary of the imposition of the draconian national security law. And so it's a great privilege and pleasure to welcome as our guest for this episode, Wing-tat. Wing-tat is the former chair of the Democratic Party of Hong Kong. I believe you were the third chairman of the party.
Yes,
and a former member of the Legislative Council in Hong Kong, who came into exile in the UK in August last year. Wing-tat, welcome.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you back. That's very good.
Thank you. Can I start, since this is the week where we mark the 25th anniversary of the handover, 25 years ago when Hong Kong was handed over to China, what were you feeling at that time and how did you yourself mark the handover?
First of all, because we understand that there's a long period of the Sino-British negotiation and also the drafting of the Basic Law. At that time, the drafting of Basic Law in the late 80s, Martin is the drafter, and I myself was the member of the consultative committee of the Basic Law. At the time, many people have aspiration, some kinds of hopes that the words and letters in the Basic Law will protect our freedom and also a gradual procedures to full democracy, maybe sometime 10 years after the handover. But I think there's a very big change after the 1989 Tiananmen massacre. And there's a tightening of the words and letters in the Basic Law. And starting from that onwards, Chinese Communist Party actually we put stability and control over prosperity and also what we call a common universal value. For example, freedoms, rule of law, and also democracy. So in 1997, in the handover nights, when Lord Patton in the convention center, I must say actually have not attended that ceremony because at that time I was the legislator. But I have duty instructed by Martin that I have to be the master control of the Legislative Council building at that time because in the midnight time, we have a gathering at the balcony and Martin and also many former legislators will speak to the crowd in front of the Let's Go building. So I must actually don't attend the ceremony, but I was in the building. But at that time, I was, actually, I'm not so excited in the way that I know we are facing a long journey, a very, very hard journey that with many struggles that may or may not have the chance to see what we hoped in my generation or my next generation about Hong Kong future. For example, freedom, rule of law, and democracy can be maintained. That's our feeling.
Thank you. Today, as I said in the introduction, you are in exile in the UK, and many of your friends and colleagues are in prison in Hong Kong. Yes. Was that what you would have ever predicted?
No. Actually, I understand that actually there's a gradual, what we call a retreat or some kinds of control after the handover, especially after two major mass protests. One is 2003. 2003, we have 1 million people walking the streets because they against the national security law at that time, the first time. And then in 2014, about the Occupy Central. a mass protest to fight for full democracy. And Beijing government do not agree with that. From then onward, we will understand this. It is not a there's no shortcut on a very short way. The Hong Kong will march to full democracy in a few years' time. Maybe not in my generation, but next generation. But the point that after the enactment of the national security law, you can observe there's a complete 100% change of that. That's mean there's no law in Hong Kong in the whole history, even in colonial period. That's mean there's some draconian laws in colony, but because of the UK governments, there are elected parliaments, they supervise the colonial government. So they would do this thing in a very controlled or self-regulated manner. Even their power, colonial government will not just lock the door and arrest the people. But now, they will use a lot of excuses. The NSL, the works and letter, can be under a wide interpretation of the police and the legal department. So even you criticize the governments in the Facebook, you will be arrested in Hong Kong now. So I heard the news this morning. There's a one very progressive member of the Democratic camp, lead of Social Democrats. Every year on the anniversary, they will hold marches and protests. This year they stopped. Why? Because the office of the National Security Law Office, there are people to meet the core member and older member of LSD and ask them to not do anything on the 1st of July. So this is very scary, just like spy and also the kinds of KGB in Russia.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you tell us a bit about when you decided it was time to leave Hong Kong, and in your own case, why? Of course, we can all understand and imagine why, but could you talk us through your thought process of deciding to go into exile? And also more recently, I believe that you took the decision to resign from your party. Perhaps you could say a bit about that as well.
First of all, actually, after the enactment of the National Security Law in July 2020, and there's a step-by-step and also some kinds of arrest started to, for example, to Jimmy Lai, and also to some people, they're activists in the pro-democratic movement. At that time, I always in a stage of assessment of my level of risk at that time. And after the arrest of 47 legislators in early 2021, and also after they closed Apple Day in June 2021. And then I find that my position is very risky in the sense that because I think, Ben, you understand that I'm a close friend of many top Hong Kong Democratic leader, Martin Lee, Jimmy Lai, and other people. And I cannot deny that we have some kind of meetings. We talk about plans of action and other things. Then I asked myself, if I stay in Hong Kong and the police and the legal department arrest me, under pressure, I will force to release the details of the many things that the government and the police, they don't know. Because this information will be very bad for the top leaders, because they will use this information to prosecute them once again. under the NSL. So I think at the late July, I think some kinds of investigation about me inside the police and also NSL office is near to the end of the investigation, because I have some friends inside the government. I understand that. So that I think it's time I have to leave Hong Kong. Then for the benefits of my friends and also of myself. And about why I left Democratic Party, I was one of the founder of Democratic Party, just like Martin Lee. And it's very sad for me to leave my party, because it's my lifelong commitment to fight for this thing with all the friends, Martin, Emily, and also Dr. Yun Sun. But why I left the party, because under the NSL, if I participate or organize open political activities in London and other places around the world, then I will accuse or have some kinds of evidence that the NSL office said I have a collusion with foreign forces. Because once I go to public, I cannot stop myself with meeting other NGO people, human rights groups, MPs, or even Lord Patton sooner or later. Then it is very big risk for the leaderships of the Democratic Party. They will be accused of colluding with me to liaise with this kind of foreign force. Although it's very far-fetched evidence, but they can still use this thing to arrest our leaders. So I think it's time for me to let. But I sent a letter to the chairman and many friends in my party that I will not leave this movement. Although I left my party, I will see them in the future democratic movement, maybe in other places. That's my commitment.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for explaining that. It's as well as being the 25th anniversary of the handover, it's also, of course, the 2nd anniversary of the imposition of the national security law, which you've spoken about. Overall, how would you describe the impact of the NSL on Hong Kong as a whole, on daily life in Hong Kong for people? And was the NSL as bad as you expected, or was it worse than you had feared?
Actually, I think it is much, much worse. In a sense, many people in Hong Kong may think about that, oh, they only affect the people they actually participate in politics. The answer is no. Because there's so many things that happen in your daily life that may directly or indirectly related to what we call politics. In a sense, it is some kinds of public policy. I'll give you one very simple example. Education. Hong Kong, we actually have an education system just like UK. It depends on the professional autonomy of the teacher. They teach about mathematics, English, and also social study. Social study, you must touch something on governance. You must touch something about history of Hong Kong. Then, how can the teacher teach about what happened in 1989? What happened when the colonial governor, just like Lord Patton, how Lord Patton ruled Hong Kong at the time? Is it good or bad? Can he make a genuine comment and true comment? If make a true, genuine comment that, oh, Lord Patton did a very good job in Hong Kong in 1992 to 1997, then he may be asked by the NLS office to explain why. And also about the textbook education. Now, you know, Chinese government and Hong Kong government said Hong Kong is never a colony. It is only the British government illegally occupy Hong Kong and rule Hong Kong illegally. They just change the history. Then you as a teacher, you have to teach according to this new kinds of saying. And you are as a parent of the children. If the child asks you, mother, ma and pa, is Lord Patton a good guy, a bad guy? How can you explain to the child? So it is not only about politics, about the way you live Hong Kong, education, the way that you can express very freely through Facebook, talk in the restaurant, or even in churches gathering. Then you understand even the churches now do not hold any mass for the June 4 massacre events. Why? Because the government said it may cross the red line. You never know where's the red line. Then not only politics, any kind of social life will cross the red line.
Absolutely. Turning to the international community and particularly Britain's responsibilities, obviously the UK introduced the British, the BNO scheme, British National Overseas Scheme, on the day that the NSL came into force. And that has provided a lifeline to potentially millions of Hong Kongers to come to the UK. Do you think, what is your view of the British government's actions, and was it too little too late?
First of all, sometimes we can turn the history around, because maybe in 1984 when Mrs. Margaret Thatcher signed the Sino-British Joint Declaration, there's not actually any option for Hong Kong people stand up and go to independence or go to some kind of more high level of self-rule or give Hong Kong full democracy in 1991 or in 1997. I hope that happened, but maybe that kinds of circumstances that not allow British government to do that. But I think at this moment, first of all, I give a very good comment to the UK government for allowing so many Hong Kong people come to Hong Kong to get a visa. It is a good way for them to get a way of life they choose, a freedom and also democratic living. But I think the British government can do better, because what I think is that not only the Hong Kong people, but the way how they can give some kinds of influence or pressure to Chinese government, because UK government is a strong government, especially Boris Johnson in Ukraine war. Your Prime Minister actually did a great job when he visited Kyiv, the capital, show moral and military support to the Ukrainian people. I think it's a good job. And I think UK government actually is a very important member of the civilized international community. They can ally with USA and also the European Union, so that they can think about some way that ask and also pressurize Chinese government that they should honor the Sino-British Joint Declaration and also the works and letter in the Basic Law. The Basic Law is only about China, because we understand the Basic Law is actually make a copy as an official document in the UN. So as a member of the UN, Chinese government should honor the works and letter and should not think that after 25 years, the Chinese government can do anything they want. They cannot. They must back to the fundamental that give Hong Kong people freedoms, rule of law, and also full democracy.
Thinking specifically about political prisoners, the many friends and colleagues of yourself, friends of mine as well, politicians, journalists, protesters, activists who are in prison. What is the best way, do you think, for people outside Hong Kong, both governments, but also activists like myself and Hong Kong Watch and others, what can we do to help Hong Kong's political prisoners?
I think this first way is that put the name and also the hardship always in our hearts. Put the names always in our radar, our daily radar, monthly radar, yearly radar. This means this many people, Jimmy Lai and also many former legislators, have been detained without trial for over 1.5 years. It is against any kinds of international judicial prudence standard. And I hope that not only UK government, but also EU, USA, Japan, Korea, and also Australia. All these are members, what I call the civilized international community. The constitution and the rights of the governments respect human rights, freedom, and democracy. So it's a way for all the activists in all these countries work together. So we have, as people outside the government, has some kind of global alliances, put all these things wherever we can. Wherever the leaders, they will meet the Chinese government leaders. Wherever there's a meeting between all these government leaders with the Chinese government counterparts, we always concern to raise these kinds of things and concern to the counterparts, so that Chinese government will face these kinds of concern and also the pressure. And in any way, in the coming 1 or 2 years, there will say a very long trial of Jimmy Lai and all these 47 former legislators. I hope that Ben and also group and also other groups in UK and also in other places, they will give advice, concern to the related government, give them some kinds of help and hopes, so that although they do some kind of thing, sacrifice for Hong Kong, but they will never walk alone in Hong Kong.
Absolutely, and that's a very timely message for world leaders, particularly as the G7 is meeting in Germany this week. Let me ask a penultimate question before I come to the final question. Many Hong Kongers now have left Hong Kong, have come either to the UK, Canada, Australia, United States. So there's a very large Hong Kong diaspora around the world. What do you think is the role of the Hong Kong diaspora? What can they do outside Hong Kong?
I think first of all, they face many what they call a settlement problem. I think they need maybe 3 months, half a year, 1 year. But after that, I always talk to my friends and also the people that I meet in streets, they're Hongkongers. Don't just live inside your Hong Kong circle. This is the traditional Chinese in the Chinatown. We as a Hong Kong, yes, we are Hong Kong people, but we also a member of the Labour community. As a member of the British community, we should often think about the welfare, the people of UK and also people around the world. Make ourselves as a member of the global community, because we have a united fight against these kinds of totalitarian governments, just like the war in Ukraine. We should go out and support the Ukrainian people, just like when other people in other countries, when they support Hong Kong. So what I suggested, once they settle, they should ally together, make solidarity, and let our Hong Kong community with other community in Canada, Australia, Taiwan and other places, join together, become a united force. And this force is not work alone. I always said that we should work with the government that these Hong Kong people resided. So I will work with you, Ben, and also other NGO, other human group. I will hope I have ways to see the MP and all the other people, talk to them, work with them, and also not only concern our problem, I also have to concern about the UK problem and also problem of other countries that face this kind of totalitarian repression. They also are brother, sister of us. They also live in a very, very unsatisfactory circumstances. So I will treat this as a global family that we work together in the future.
Thank you very much. One final question. As we reflect on the 25th anniversary of the handover, the 2nd anniversary of the National Security Law, but look to the future, what message about the future would you want to share with our viewers, whether they are Hong Kongers or friends of Hong Kong?
I remember I wrote a letter to some of my core members in the Democratic Party. I very sincerely told them that when I arrived in UK last August, at the very beginning, I'm quite sad and also pessimistic, not on my own living, because I find that globally, totalitarian government, especially China, grow stronger economically, and also the civilized country, democratic country, sometimes they have some kind of differences in policy. So they split, they work differently. So it looks some kinds of not so good for me. But after the Ukraine war, although Ukraine war is a sad thing to me because there's so many people die in this war, but we find some kinds of paradigm changes after the war, in the sense that the leaders of EU, the leaders USA and also UK and other civilized countries, they have a new analysis of Russia and China. They find they have to work together to become a united force. And then you have strong enough to resist the kinds of what they call aggression, both in military or economic aggression. So I told myself that I have to only contribute a little bit of that for myself. I hope that my members in Hong Kong and also Hong Kong people in UK and around the world, and all people that support the universal value will see that lights after the Ukraine war. We will once again united together, so we can work together to find a better future. I always said to myself, I like to read history book. Civilization always facing ups and downs. This last 10 years maybe not a good era for the civilization, but I still have confidence that civilization will win at the end.
That's a very hopeful note on which to end, and I totally agree with you. I think history shows that dictatorships might last long, but they don't last forever. And,
yes.
And freedom and justice and truth can prevail. Wing-tat, thank you so much for joining us for this episode, and thank you for all your reflections.
Thank you, Ben. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, thank you.